Today I'm going to be talking about ISO and how it affects your exposure, how it affects your image. I have some really great examples, so check out this video. So getting a perfect exposure in perfect conditions is really easy. You're outside on a sunny day, you can use whatever shutter speed you want, you can use whatever aperture you want, and your ISO can be a nice low 100. But in a dark conditions, it's nighttime, you're indoors, you're going to want to sacrifice one of those elements of exposure in order to get a good image. So we were down in Disney, we went into the Mexico Pavilion. I thought it would be a great place to show you exactly what you need to do to get an exposure in a place like that and how the ISO can affect your image. Alright, so there's three ways that you're going to control your exposure in any photograph. There's the shutter speed, the aperture, and there's your ISO setting. Basically what the ISO setting is the sensitivity of your sensor to light. A low ISO number like 100 or 200 is less sensitive to light, and a high ISO number like 1600, 3200, 6400 is more sensitive to light. At those higher settings, at those higher ISO settings, you can actually shoot in lower light and still have a quicker shutter speed, smaller aperture, if that's what you need.
But the problem when you kick the ISO up and you're at 6400, 3200, it degrades the image. So to get like a really clean shot at night, you would need to have a long exposure. Set your ISO to like 100, and it might be a 20-30 second exposure to get the proper exposure in ISO 100. That same shot can be handheld at ISO 6400, and you might be able to get a shutter speed of 1/50th of a second. But the resulting images are going to be very different. So we're going to go into the Mexico Pavilion where it's dark, and Eric's going to take a few shots at different ISOs, and we're going to drop them in the video here. And this way you can get an idea of how it works.
Let's go.
All right. So we're here in the Mexico Pavilion, and as you can see, it's pretty dark in here. Eric's getting his tripod out, and he's going to show you how when he raises his ISO, his shutter speed is going to become quicker. But it's also going to result in a less, the quality of the image that he's taking is actually going to go down with each time he bumps up the ISO. So the highest quality image is going to be at ISO 100, but in this kind of darkness, that might be a shutter speed of, could be 30 seconds, could be 20 seconds, and that's not something that you can handhold. But when he bumps it up to, say, ISO 6400 or 8000, he could probably pick the camera up in his hand and take the same shot. But we're going to show you the images off the tripod so that they're exactly the same. And this way you can get an idea of what happens to the pixels and how the image degrades as you crank up the ISO.
Alright, so we're inside Mexico Pavilion. It's beautiful in here, but it's really dark in here. So I want to get a shot of the ancient pyramid far in the background, and it's even darker over there. Now, I happen to have a tripod, which is great. So I want to shoot at a nice clean low ISO, which is 100, but in order to do that I have to take a 3-second exposure, which obviously I can't do handheld. So I'm going to set it up here, I'm going to take a 3-second exposure, and you can see what it looks like when we zoom in and look at the image at 100% on the computer, that it's very clean, there's no noise in the image, it's a really nice image. But again, it takes 3 seconds to get that image. Handheld, you can't possibly do that. Now if I raise my ISO up to a really high number, like 6400, I'm getting a shutter speed of 1/20th of a second, which is still kind of slow. You can probably pull it off handheld, so I'm going to try that handheld. We'll see what it looks like. It might be a little blurry. It's definitely going to be a little grainy. Now you can see it's going to be grainy, it's going to be blurry, not optimal. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase my ISO even more to 25,600, which is going to allow me to take this shot at 1/125th of a second. pretty close to where you really want to hold it steady hand holding, but you can do it hand holding definitely. But you're going to see on this image now, at ISO 25,600, the image is really grainy. The image really isn't very sharp, but it's what you need to do to get a shot like this handheld. So take a look at this. Now we're going to go back and compare that to the original image at ISO 100, which was a 3-second exposure. And if you look at both of those images back and forth next to each other, you can see the difference in grain that it gives you between the two different ISOs. Alright, so you can see from those examples exactly what the images look like at different ISO speeds. Basically, you know, at high ISOs, you're making a sacrifice. Your sensor is working to digitally enhance the image to make it brighter. In order to do that, the image is going to end up being grainy. When you're outside, you can shoot at a nice low ISO. Everything's going to be nice and smooth. But when you're in dark conditions, if you don't have a tripod and your aperture isn't wide enough to be able to shoot at a fast enough shutter speed, you're going to have to increase your ISO. The sacrifice is the grain. You can clean it up a little bit in Lightroom. We'll show you how to do that in another video, in one of our editing videos. But really, you know, it's a sacrifice that you have to make in order to get a good exposure, a fast shutter speed, a wide enough aperture. High ISO is the third thing, the sacrifice that you're going to have to make in order to get a proper exposure in a dark environment like that. So I hope that helps explain ISO a little bit more. If you like the video, click like. If you enjoy what we're doing here on the channel, subscribe. We have a lot of other content, a lot of other tutorials that I think you'll really enjoy. Goodbye.